is Chatham House, and then everyone rolls their eyes. Okay. So the idea of this, and the idea I had specifically for you, sir, is something that you said, or actually that you sent to me. It was a message that you sent that talked about the Rousseau's quote.
Yeah.
About chains.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you could. Now, I'm happy to bring it up, but if you remember it, I would love for you to just freestyle on that concept.
Yeah. Man is born free, yet everywhere he is found in chains. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I should acknowledge that in the context that Rousseau gave that quote, he's giving it as his opening salvo for good governance, right? That's not really why the quote resonates with me personally.
Why does the quote resonate with you?
Yeah, it resonates with me because I see it as a really pointed sort of social commentary, I think, on, I don't know, I guess on the restraints that we place on ourselves sort of as we move through life. And so I guess to be more specific, one of the things that I think many of us sort of remember fondly about our childhood is this sense of like freedom, right? It was like we were sort of free from responsibility, and because that was true, we were free to kind of like be our whole selves. And that just made everything fun, right? It was just like your main focus was just to like have fun. And you didn't so much worry about, I guess, what the trade-offs of that fun was, or, you know, like, so myself, I really liked playing video games growing up.
Okay.
Could I have done something more quote-unquote productive with my time than like spend 6 hours playing Call of Duty with my friends? Yeah. And at this stage in my life, I worry a lot more about like, is this the best use of my time? Am I being productive? Blah, blah, blah. And I wind up doing something that is boring and I don't really like, but I feel good about it because it's the adult productive thing to do. Whereas when I was a child, I didn't care. I just didn't care. I was sort of free from the chains of like, I need to be an adult, I need to be productive. And so I engaged in something very unproductive, playing video games with my friends. But to this day, those are some of my favorite memories. Like when I think about when I was sort of like most happy, a lot of those times were like, I was just kind of doing stupid stuff. I shared with you that I have frequently coupled Rousseau's quote with a scripture that says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty.
Yes.
And that is, again, taking the quote sort of into a different context. And that, the coupling of those two, to me, symbolizes that a lot of times it's our own, like, failures and shortcomings and sins that sort of chain us, that they make us feel that, like, that they are our defining features, right? That, like, because I made this mistake, I am whatever that mistake was. Of course, for those who sort of ascribe to biblical principles, liberty from that is found through Christ.
Okay. I'm curious about when I heard that. Yes, so you, I shouldn't say accurately because I'm not here to assess you, but I definitely agree with your take on Rousseau's context for the quote, and then where you took it makes a lot of sense too. I do like the pairing in terms of the spiritual context. For now, I'd like to table that, and we can return to it in a moment. But what's interesting to me is likening it to childhood. We're born free, but I would wonder what freedom actually is, because even within the context of childhood, you are working within a construct that is governed for you, right? There is a luxury there that is not being discussed at the moment, and not that on purpose, like a purposeful omission, but what's not being discussed is, number one, you have a family and authority figures who are covering your expenses. They're covering your rent to be there. They purchased you some kind of video game console, right? You weren't of legal age to work, so you couldn't purchase it yourself, nor have a credit card. So either way, these things have been provided to you within some kind of social structure called a family, a household, but that structure provided the opportunity for you to do those things. And what I'm wondering is, were you free?
I think the correct answer is no. No child is actually free. Or maybe the better word is that no child is actually at liberty because they're entirely beholden to their support system. But you are enjoying the illusion of freedom because as a kid, the concepts that you just laid out would have gone straight over my head. Again, I would have said, like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
I'm going to go play video games.
Right, yeah.
And there is, it's not freedom, but it feels like freedom, right? And I guess at some point, you lose the illusion, realize that you are not free, probably once you either leave the home or start entering the workforce, whenever sort of real responsibilities start attaching to you.
Okay.
And I think the hope is that you will one day find that feeling of freedom again, but it will actually be genuine in the future. Sadly, I think for most people that probably looks like retirement. But anyway, yeah, I certainly take your point. You're not actually free as a child. You just feel like you're free. And that was good enough for me.
And that's interesting, and I'm really curious. So there's two directions we can go here. In my mind, I see this fork in the road: sociology and psychology. All right. The sociological question would be: is that enough? Is the illusion enough for satisfaction at the social level, right? At the community level. Now, the psychological side is, I'm wondering why you went to childhood, and I'm curious in terms of your link from the Rousseau quote to remembering playing video games and that sense of freedom, while even now looking back, kind of admitting and knowing and coming to peace with this could have been illusory. So there are two directions. This is a choose your own adventure. Which way do you want to go? Do you want to go psychology or sociology?
You know what? I actually really like both prompts, and I will, without putting you to sleep, try to tackle both.
I got snacks, man. I'm not falling asleep.
And I'll start with the latter, actually.
Yeah.
It's probably immediately connected to childhood for me because personally, I believe that, like, with age, generally speaking, comes more responsibility, and generally speaking, more responsibility restricts our liberty. So you reach a certain age where you need to work.
Responsibility restricts liberty. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
So you reach a certain age where you need to work. That means you need to report to a job for X amount of hours. That is a restriction of your liberty to do something else with those hours.
Okay.
For many folks, you reach a certain age where you have a romantic partner, a spouse even. You, generally speaking, owe them some amount of time and attention.
Yeah. I brought this up with a friend of mine who's about to move in with his girlfriend, and I'm like, yeah, you just gave up all your freedom. And he's like, nah, I'm my own man. I was like, TikTok, we'll see.
Well, yes, I think you are correct in that, generally speaking, there is trade-offs. I mean, I I don't really like saying like you owe this person time and attention.
Interesting.
Because you should want to do it, so it shouldn't feel like a
Obligation.
a debt. Yeah, an obligation.
Okay.
But it is, like, let's be really honest about it, right?
Okay.
And so, like, in the context of this conversation, that does work as a restriction on your liberty. Again, hopefully you enjoy paying that obligation, but it is a restriction on your liberty insofar as, like, that is time and attention that you are not paying to Call of Duty, for example. For many folks, children come at some point, and that is a massive restriction on your liberty. And so, anyway, I say all that to say, I think back to childhood when I think of this Rousseau quote, because you are sort of free from many of these responsibilities that act as restrictions. I think the second piece there was am I at peace with the idea that it was sort of a mirage? Perhaps it was a mirage of liberty and freedom as a kid. And I'd say pretty forcefully, yes, not only am I at peace with it, I am grateful to those around me who protected that mirage. I consider myself extremely fortunate in that there were many real adults around me who had sort of carried all of these responsibilities, restrictions on themselves, so that I didn't have to feel it. They let me enjoy the mirage of freedom that comes with childhood.
Tell me about, thank you. Keep that. Tell me about what you know about the Electoral College.
Oof. I don't like it.
Why? Why don't you like it?
I'm hesitating because I feel like I'm betraying my home state a little bit here. I come from a small state, which means I should like the Electoral College. But I don't like it because I feel like it's a bit of an outdated model. And for better or for worse, these days, most people live in metropolises. Like, most people live in and around cities.
Okay.
Their votes ought not be diluted or count less just because, like, most people live in and around them. I understand that there is a need to protect the interests of states that are more sparsely populated, but to me, the Senate already fulfills that need. The Electoral College, like, it does not proportionately represent California, for example, New York, for example.
Right.
Like, realistically speaking, if you had a proportionate Electoral College, either California would have like half, I don't want to be dramatic, a quarter of the delegates, or Montana would have zero. Right. And so, anyway, I don't like it because I don't feel like it accurately reflects the will of the people.
Well, what's the intention, though?
The intent, the original intent was to make sure that the small states were not, that their voice still mattered, right? That you couldn't just have, 3 or 4 densely populated states dominating electoral outcomes. That's what we wanted to prevent. I understand that. I think that's a noble end. I would argue that the Senate already protects the interests of small states.
Okay. Tell me about, keeping in mind what we talked about with Rousseau and what you talked about in terms of liberty and the happy illusion, I'm going to call it that, is now tell me about trickle-down economics.
I don't like it. Are you just bringing up things I don't like?
You cue the song. That's that I don't like.
Right. I don't like that either. And
why?
Well, and I'll be a little more forceful on this one. I think the idea at its core is it's not predatory. I think the idea at its core is, I won't say predatory, but I think it is intentionally misleading.